All right. Going parabolic. I got Lea Thompson coming in. I think she's here. Hold on. Let me let her in.
Hello.
All right. Lea, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Very good. So I've already started. I like to just kind of record right through it. So I reached out to you, and simply because I've seen a lot of your work, and I'm really interested in people who I think are influencing kind of information and sharing stuff in an interesting way. And I thought I'd just kind of reach out to you, uh, get you on Going Parabolic, and chat a little bit. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I know I've seen you around the Twitterverse for a long time, so it's good to finally get to meet and chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So where are you? And tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am based out of kind of the Seattle area, a little bit north, almost to Canada. I can almost see Canada from my
Oh,
living
wow.
room, so
Very cool.
right up in the corner there. But yeah, so I guess we could get into my story of how I got into crypto if you want.
But
But
before you do, how is Seattle and how's it been over the last 3 or 4 months?
yeah, it's been really crazy. Just in certain aspects of everything happening with this global pandemic, right?
Mm.
Like for a while, it was called ground zero of the U.S. for coronavirus cases, and then there's just been some civil unrest and different things happening within Seattle, and
Yeah.
so I've actually not been super impacted by it because I do live in a smaller town that's kind of outside of the main city, and so where I live, we haven't actually had very many cases. We've had very, very few deaths. So overall, it hasn't felt nearly as different. Like, obviously, things are different in terms of things being shut down and wearing masks and all of that. But it wasn't like being in a big city, like I imagine being right in Seattle or being right in like New York City or something would have been. So I've been pretty grateful for that, actually.
And how have people been dealing with kind of the economic impacts of maybe their jobs being disrupted or just life being disrupted a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I know so many people that lost their jobs. You look at those unemployment numbers, and I can count, people that I personally know, including like family members of mine that, have lost their jobs. And so it's been really crazy just watching this all go down, especially what I think is just it's showing government inefficiency at its finest that some of my friends were making more money on unemployment than they were in their job because of these stimulus checks and extra things that were coming through. And so yeah, it's been just really crazy. And I think that a lot of people have this false sense of security in the like, okay, the world didn't collapse. And they don't think about the trickle down effect of what this all is going to be doing and how it might impact things like, and how businesses are starting to close. Like my favorite breakfast place went out of business during all of this. And that's a bummer. I'm going to miss those hash browns, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So,
Now, are you still in school or did you finish?
no, I'm not. I've been graduated for a while.
Right. No, and the reason I ask is, part of the effect of all this has been academics, whether it's, you
Mm-hmm.
know, high school, college, graduate school. I was just wondering what's the scene there in regards to school and your friends? Are people thinking about online courses? Are they talking about going back to campus? If you have, because I have a bunch of friends that are, thinking about going back to school, or their parents are having discussions with what to do with these kids. So it's really
Yeah.
wild.
It's really crazy. So I don't have, I would say, like maybe a lot of friends that are in school, but I have a brother who was one of those 2020 high school graduates, that had to deal with, missing out on graduation and like all of that stuff. And, looking at higher education as a next step, I think a lot of people are questioning, like, is it really worth all this money to get these Zoom classes? you know?
Right. You're getting the same certificate. You're
Yeah.
missing out on some social stuff, which I get,
Hmm.
but you're we saw a Harvard law student recently sue the school because he's paying 58, $60,000, for online classes, and that doesn't seem right.
It's really crazy. And I actually never even got the whole like college experience because I did school online because I was like, hey, I can still work full time and do school and then I don't have to get into debt for college. And so I think that more people are starting to realize that and at least question, because the value proposition in a lot of ways is being in class with a professor where you can really talk one-on-one, having friends, parties, like the community, like all of that. And so when you take all of that away and you're just on a Zoom call, there's a lot of free information in the world. And I think a lot of universities don't even necessarily have top people in their fields teaching. And you can get classes from top people in their fields for a lot cheaper than a college education. So I'm hoping that this actually starts some more conversations and shifts in like trends in higher education, because I think that this has been a conversation that needs to happen for a long time.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that the situation with COVID has kind of expedited the use of technologies that have been here. They just
Mhm.
weren't to the level of adoption that they are now. And I would be shocked if there's not an option for students in all iterations of academia to take online classes. And it won't even be called like homeschooling. It'll just be like, I only go to school part-time. The other time
Mm.
I do online classes. Or so it's interesting. And I like to have these conversations around the periphery because all of it is economics. And if
Yeah.
you believe in this kind of crypto landscape, it's about money. So it's all kind of tied into me. So thanks for kind of exploring the periphery. I also like to get a sense of just how you think about things.
Yeah, definitely. No, these are all really interesting conversations to be having right now.
Yep.
You mentioned economics, and that's actually one of the things that I think has been like one of the positive takeaways of all of this craziness is that I think for the first time in a long, long time, people are asking questions about our monetary system. And they're asking things like, hey, what happens when you just keep printing trillions of dollars? Does that have an impact on our
Yeah, it's
economy? And
such
so
such a great point. Like it red pilled everyone on economics. Like nobody was thinking about this stuff. Now, yesterday the world got turned into crypto Twitter. I mean, it's really 2020 has been something else. But what was your background, or what did you study in school?
So yeah, so my background is that in tech actually. So I work for a tech company. I have for about 8 years now, and my degree is kind of like a business meets tech degree. So it's really more business, but there were some tech classes in it. I think the title, to be honest, I chose it because it sounded fancy. And
Yeah.
why else do you get a degree but then to impress people? Was information technology and administrative management is my degree. So.
And it sounds like you're working in your field.
Yeah, and I
Well,
think that that's
congratulations.
well, I started the job there and then ended up going back to school because I'd had an associate's before that and finished my degree while I was there because I'm working for someone who pays for college. And so I was like, hey, might as well. I hadn't really valued it enough before where I thought it was worth it. But I was like, well, if I can, get at least part of it for free, they didn't pay for all of it. I
Yeah.
decided just to take advantage of that. So
Sounds like a great deal. All right. So tell me how you got introduced to crypto, Bitcoin, and why you're doing what you're doing.
yeah, so I've known about Bitcoin for a long time because I had some friends that were miners back in 2011. But sadly, I did not listen to them when they kept telling me to buy Bitcoin over the
Yeah.
years. So I really got into crypto more heavily for myself in kind of early 2017. And so it's kind of a random story, but I don't know if you're familiar with the blogging platform Steemit.
Mhm.
But I ran across it like 3 years ago and I had never made content before, but I decided to just try posting. I made like a ukulele video, like a little cover. Like I'm not like a musician or anything, but I think it's kind of fun and do it for fun. But it made like $100 in crypto. And I was like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Mhm.
So
Very
it
cool.
just, it really led me down the rabbit hole from there of being like, but like, is this worth real money though? Right? Like those questions and like,
Yeah.
and then why is it worth anything? And then what can I do with it? What is this thing called an exchange? What's this thing called a hardware wallet? BTC pairings, like all of these things, right? You start to learn about it when you actually have some crypto in your hand. And that's why I think I'm really passionate about, really bringing more awareness to projects and to companies that are making crypto adoption easier, and especially where people can actually earn crypto before they even have to spend it, or buy it themselves, like figure out how to KYC and go through an exchange and do all these things, and then don't keep your money on exchange and all the details. And so I think because my personal story, I saw the power of friends telling me about it for years, and then me physically having some to then reckon with, that kind of, led me to keep going deeper down the path.
And how do you stack, because you've spent some time and a lot of time doing interviews and research and in your own research, personal research, like how do you stratify Bitcoin versus the rest of the stuff? Because you do spend time on the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, for my own kind of personal investment strategy, it's kind of shifted over the last 3 years. And so, what I think is really interesting is that recently CoinMarketCap put out a research paper saying that the majority of people get into Bitcoin first, and then they start checking out altcoins. Where I had kind of the opposite effect, because I got in like kind of early 2017. My first crypto was Steam, like an altcoin, and the ICO pump. You're seeing all these coins go crazy, and so I was like, Bitcoin's cool, but like this is kind of fun. Like let me like dig into this a little more. But then, I got pretty wrecked in 2018. So it really did shift my perspective to say, okay, instead of casting a wide net with all these little, low cap altcoins, like let me really refine that and just really focus on projects that I want to understand. I understand their value proposition. I know why I think they're going to be successful. I'm taking the time to keep up with them, on Twitter, and like watching their blogs, and just, making sure that what I thought was a good investment idea maybe a year ago is still a good investment idea, because maybe the team is still on track for the things that I thought brought value to the market. And so really kind of narrowing that down to focusing more on some of the larger, more established altcoins for that section of my portfolio, but also the ones that I'm willing to invest the time to keep up with, right? So I've definitely moved more like heavier Bitcoin in my own portfolio.
Yeah.
But in terms of like who I choose to bring on the show and guests, even though from like a token perspective, there's fewer altcoins that I'm really wanting to invest in, I think that there are a lot of really cool projects and use cases for blockchain technology out there. And so I actually think it's really fun. Like I love getting, bigger names on the show and getting to talk with them. But I think it's really fun to chat with some crypto startups and like people that are just like really, getting in and taking these concepts and doing interesting things with it. So I kind of like having a mix of different people from like different sections of the cryptoverse on there too.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I have been a startup guy my whole life, and I still do really early stage venture. I don't look at late stage stuff. So it's more interesting for me to have a conversation with you, who is out there meeting kind of early stage people as well, and then you sharing your perspective with me. It just gives me more data points. So I'm being selfish because I'm kind of working while I'm talking to you, which is, what this is all about. So I really appreciate that. Are you in your life taking this space seriously in terms of investing, or do you still have like a diversified investment strategy that's 99% in traditional vehicles, the stock market, real estate, etc.?
So my portfolio, like
And why are
overall,
you even thinking about investing? Like how did that happen?
okay, well, actually, personal finance and financial literacy are things that I am so passionate about. And so I
Why?
actually,
But why?
because I think that financial freedom is just, it is freedom. Like
Yeah, but I get that. But why do you feel that way? Where did that come from?
okay, so I'll give you an example. I have friends that are, same age as me or a little older maybe, that have never really learned about money, that are still living paycheck to paycheck, that, just are so stressed about money. Or even like my parents never really learned about, I never learned about money from them. They're honestly really bad with money. They've really mismanaged it. And I'm looking at them as they get closer to retirement age. And I'm like, this must be so scary for you guys. Like, this must be so stressful. And so actually, like, I think that seeing the people around me have so much money stress, especially growing up, I really decided that I was like, I want my life to be different. And I know that they say you can't buy happiness, but you can buy peace of mind.
Mhm.
And you can, so that's why I think I'm so passionate about it, because I think it frees up your mental space. It also, I think, allows you to make better decisions about how you want to live your life. Like, if you're in a job you don't like, and you've got, a good stockpile emergency fund, rainy day fund, you have options. You're not totally stuck. And so I think that that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to be able to do what you want with your time. And I think that financial independence is one of the strongest vehicles to be able to do that.
Right. So there are lessons that people teach you with like intention, and then there's certain lessons that you learn because you are listening and looking. And I really do appreciate, you sharing that, seeing maybe some financial hardship in your family led you to
Mhm.
say options are important. This economic
Mhm.
stress that I'm facing in my life with my family is hard. People not planning for retirement, not smart. There's probably a better way than me just being a cowed employee. So I really do think, and I wish, and I'm hopeful that more people are like, wake up
Mhm.
to this plan. And it's so cool. I really love that you brought up that COVID-19 and the economic stress that we've had as a kind of society or globe of humans on the planet. We've been like made to think about, what is money? Where does it come
Mhm.
from? How did this magic money just appear? What is Bitcoin? Like, it's a really interesting moment. And I love your statement around options, because I
Mhm.
often say that to people. Like, for me, my own pursuit of a certain level of wealth, like, I want to be a billionaire, and I
Mhm.
don't want to be a billionaire simply to have that monetary kind of designation. I want to be a billionaire because it gives you options to be and to think like a billionaire and do the things that
Mhm.
billionaires do, philanthropic things, make impact on the world things, have the options that a billionaire has. So I think it's so cool the way you're approaching this. Um, that being said, like, how in are you with crypto, or is it still something that you're doing research on?
Yeah, so for my own like entirety of my overall portfolio, it's pretty heavily crypto.
Mhm.
So I do have some traditional investments. Like, honestly, a lot of it is just kind of stocks from companies I've worked for, 401ks I had, so that I kind of like let be,
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've transferred the majority of what I had in traditional vehicles into crypto,
Yeah.
because I mean, ultimately for myself, I'm like, okay, people might say this is risky, or that, to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, in like a one sector. But ultimately, like, the way I look at it is like, I'm young, and I honestly truly believe that this has so much potential to continue growing. And I believe that so much to my core that I'm willing to be a little riskier, because I honestly think it's going to pay off. And worst case scenario, if I have to start rebuilding, I have a lot of confidence in myself that I can. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, I think you always have to look at what's the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, Bitcoin goes to zero and I will be very, very sad.
Yeah.
But it's not like I'm at retirement age and I have to really be thinking about hedging that risk. Like, I'm young enough that it's fine.
So
I
smart.
feel pretty confident. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
smart. How are you monetizing the it's girl gone crypto?
Mm-hmm.
How are you monetizing that? And if you'll allow me to kind of play around with how you answer this, that would be fun. So, are you monetizing it? How do you monetize it?
Yeah, so anyone who's watched my interviews the last few months, you've probably seen a nice little Cake Wallet intro video at the beginning. So they're definitely one of my sponsors.
Mhm.
But yeah, just working with brands, I think is really fun. Like, so like recently I
What
did
is Cake Wallet?
oh, it's a Monero wallet.
Hmm. And
And
so,
so
privacy token wallet.
Yeah, so it's for Monero specifically, but you can exchange between tons of different other coins in and out of Monero on there. But what I really like about them is that they have an iOS app, which I think really made Monero more accessible because before then it was just a little bit trickier. You had to be a little more technical and you had to be on like a desktop. And, I think there was an Android app, but no one had done iOS and the user experience is just really easy and simple. So I think that's what I really liked the most about them was making Monero more accessible.
And Leah, do you take equity or do you take payments in cash when you get a sponsor?
Yeah, so generally payments in Bitcoin is preferable, but
Mhm.
yeah, that can be a little flexible. But
Would and I'm just challenging your approach. I think you if you can ask for equity in these companies, like
mm,
if you can, because I'm not an investor in Cake Wallet. I don't know if they went out and raised money yet, but if you go out there and you're schlepping Cake Wallet all over the place, you're hawking it here, and
right.
it blows up. Okay, you got some Bitcoin. I don't,
Mm,
but wouldn't it be great if they gave you 1% equity in Cake Wallet?
yeah, that's
And
a
I don't know if you've thought of that before, but I think it's a neat strategy for
mm,
entrepreneurs who are working to promote this stuff because you take on a lot of risk. I've seen my buddy Bitlord, talk about certain projects and get absolutely wrecked, and he
mm,
may have been getting paid some money for it, but is it worth it to take the reputational risk to
mm.
promote something and it not be what you thought? I think you should do that and get some upside.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. And one thing that I'm always like really kind of cautious with, I would say, because you talk about like getting wrecked, and like I'm so cautious with anything I recommend where someone could potentially lose money. Like that's like
Yeah,
always a filter I put on where I'm like, okay, this is like a wallet or
yeah,
whatever it is. This is like I recently did a campaign with crypto trader tax. I'm like, if you need help with your,
taxes.
taxes, your crypto tax, like it's a service. So I try
Yeah.
to kind of go the softer side of things just to kind of be safer as well. So
And do you approach the podcast or the show that you do as a business?
yeah, I mean it
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
right. And so I mean, if you're taking sponsors and you're doing that, then that's technically, I mean, a business is when you're making money, right? So
Yeah,
that's
and if it became um, if it started to generate more money than or the same amount of money as your current job that you work at, would you quit your job?
That's a good question. So, my kind of perspective on this, and that's actually a perfect kind of segue to tie back into something we talked about earlier, which is this idea of financial independence. And so, I'm kind of in a stack sats as fast as I can kind of, mentality right now. And so, yes, I work a lot of hours between doing my social channels and still working for the tech company. But for me, it's worth it because it's enabling me to stack faster, basically. And one thing that I think is kind of cool too is, when you're not really worried about paying your bills, it kind of frees you up to make, I think, better decisions and not desperate decisions. And when it comes to content, right? And so, if I was, let's say, worried about paying my bills, like I might be more tempted to like take a sponsorship deal that I didn't really want. But instead, I can be like really picky about who I work with and I really like that too. I like protecting that piece of things. And so, so yeah, I don't know when I'll leave my job, but for now, I'm able to kind of manage it. So I figure why not, right?
Yeah, well, and it's really I don't think there's a right answer.
Yeah.
I think working two jobs is a strategy in itself, right? Working three,
Hmm.
you may have three jobs, you may have four jobs. I tend to have like seven. So, and I look down on people who don't have at least four or five jobs. So, and I think that that's super smart. Working a 40-hour work week, and again, I'm projecting my own beliefs on you and people listening to this, but working a 40-hour work week seems kind of easy.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I think that you get used to a certain pace, right? And then it just kind of becomes normal. So maybe at first it might be really hard to work 40 hours a week and then do something on the side. But then once you get in the rhythm of it, it's not so bad. And then you can kind of keep layering more. And the other thing too is I think that like within like the last few months while we've been quarantined and I've been spending less time out with friends and I've had more time at home, I've really been working on developing processes within my kind of Girl Gone Crypto. So it's more streamlined. So I've kind of figured out, some back end processes and just improved things and made things more efficient so that it's easier for me to juggle both as well. So
And do you go through like a third party to do editing or anything, or do you do it all yourself?
I'm a one woman show, so
I love it.
I do
Yeah.
it all.
So
Yeah.
we at the team at Going Parabolic, the whole team of people that work on my show, we have a lot to learn from someone like you who just does it by themselves. So,
You
I'll
know,
make sure I talk to the whole crew here and tell them to step up their game. They need to see that this can be done, by one person. So, that's interesting. Where did you get your kind of financial conservatism? Like I would call it financial. You sound financially conservative. You sound like someone who
Mm.
lives within her means, wants to not be tied down to debt. You're investing. I mean, what again? Where did all this come from?
I really honestly do blame my poor sweet parents. Like I
That's
really
cool.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, really, I do think that when you grow up with like constantly being told like you can't have birthday parties out and you can't do this and we can't afford ice cream and we can't like I honestly think that impacts you on a deep level as a child. And it made me just realize because I had friends that were well off, that had nice houses, like from school. And so I would go to their house and like, it just seemed so much less stressful. And I thought that they're like, I loved that they lived in this beautiful home. I thought that was really cool. And so I think that seeing that there was another way that you could live, I was like, well, what's the difference here? And I realized the difference was just managing finances better. And so it's been actually like one of the largest motivating factors, I think, in like my just development as like a person and my motives and like things that I do is just really wanting to protect that level of stress. Because just to take it even one level deeper, my parents also have really some bad health problems stemmed from stress, which was stemmed from money stress. And so like
Wow.
I that's why I'm so passionate about this, is looking how it's like not only impacted their kind of mental health and stress, but their physical health as well, and how that's not what I want for myself. So
Isn't it's amazing how this stuff is all interconnected, right? Like again, we can start a discussion about we can start a discussion. Sorry, what's up, Molly? Okay, sorry. Sorry. You can start a discussion around the periphery, about Seattle, where you're from, get into pandemic, get into the economic effects of all that and the decision making. I mean, it's all connected in health and finance. It's really an amazing kind of thing. And I wish that people like you would spend time talking about economics like we are today to your audiences, because I think it's a story that needs to be heard. People just don't know how to do what you're doing.
no, it's true. And like I'm the one in my friend group that everyone calls with like budgeting questions and like, all of the things. And they're like, I don't know. And it's hard too, because I've spent so much time with some of my friends trying to be like, that $100 a month gym that you pay for, and the that box of Patagonia stuff you just got last week, and oh, you just ordered another $300 jacket, like just little things. I think frugality is really underappreciated in our world today.
Yep.
And I think that I mean, there's a quality of life, right? Like I spend more on certain things. Like I spend more on where I live because I think that's, something that impacts my quality of life. But I buy all my clothes at secondhand stores because to me, that doesn't really matter. I don't need to spend money on that. And so just kind of realizing what's really going to impact your quality of life and what isn't. And again, if you have a lot of money, like you can make some different decisions. But if you're saying, I don't know where all my money's going, and I'm like, well, I see all these shipments you're getting. Like I know where your money is going.
Yep.
So,
Yep. No, it's
but
it's amazing. I mean, again, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I
no, it's
I
okay.
really do think, standing on the point of investing, like you've been taught invaluable lessons around that. Being kind of almost a minimalist in your approach to
Mm,
life. Not saying you're doing without everything, you're just making decisions and buying what you want and not buying what you don't need. I love investing in where you live because it's kind of grounds
mm,
you, and it
mhm.
refreshes you. All the things that kind of make you feel good are kind of there. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting perspective you have. Recently I read that a few of your friends, and I think you were involved, got delisted from Instagram. Was that true, or was that
Oh,
false?
that was just a whole crazy situation. So yeah, we woke up one day and I had a DM from Rachel Crypto Finally being like, "Wow, my Instagram has been disbanded." Or whatever the correct
Delisted or right,
delisted, yeah,
right.
I forget what the exact word was, but
Yeah.
basically like it's gone. And I was like, "Oh wow, that sucks." And then I opened mine and it was the same thing and I was like, "What?" And
Wow.
then Tech with Catalina had the same thing as well. And so what ended up happening, because it took about 24 hours for for them to even tell us why. Like literally on Instagram it said, it didn't tell us any reason why. It said in 24 hours we'll decide if you're even allowed to appeal this. And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, okay. So 24 hours later, we got the message basically saying that we had been mass reported for being impersonators of our own accounts. And so it wasn't that Instagram was censoring crypto content. That was a lot of people thought that might have been it at first, but we were like, that's too random that it was just us and like not a larger crypto thing. And
So
so
was this like a coordinated attack against you guys?
yeah, I mean, we don't know who did it, but it was, yeah. I mean, it clearly was because all three of us were mass reported. Someone paid to have us bot reported to Instagram. And I think the reason they did Instagram is because that's the easiest platform to take someone down on, because they don't have a manual review process before getting rid of accounts. And so Twitter does. Twitter, if you get mass reported, they'll have a human being look at your account before deactivating it, and Instagram doesn't do that. So it's actually not that hard to attack someone on Instagram, unfortunately.
Why do you think that happened?
You know, it's all
Is it
speculation,
because of
right?
the Binance thing?
Well, that was a theory that has been floated around as a potential, because that's the only thing we could really think of that kind of tied the three of us together. Because Rachel had started a conversation about how, you know, of 25 people around the world that were nominated, she was the only female. Which she's like, there's so many great women in this space. Like, why, you know, wasn't there more inclusion? So she was kind of starting a conversation about inclusivity
I
and
wasn't
diversity in the
included.
space.
Yeah. And Zuby identifies as a woman, and he wasn't included either.
Oh
I don't know if
man.
you know Zuby, but
I
anyway,
don't.
that's no worries. He actually is he 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 identified the powerlifting. It was like a deadlift record for a woman in the UK,
Oh,
identified as a woman that day.
yes, I
And
heard
then,
about
right, so
that.
he holds the record deadlift. I think it's deadlift. It's a little peculiar, but I won't, I will leave judgment to someone else. I'm just bringing that up. But what do you think was the driver of this kind of situation? Because I thought it was interesting. And
Mhm.
I, I'm out here as a fan of people who are promoting, crypto, financial literacy, and I always hate to see these kind of like concerted efforts or focused efforts to
Mhm.
quiet people and censor them.
Yeah, and so that's really the best guess we have right now. Who was behind it, we don't know. But you know, the three of us were kind of engaging in that conversation, and it's been crazy. It's really unfortunate. You know, I do think that, you know, being a person in the space, in a public space, sometimes you have to worry about stuff like that. It's sad when they take it to that level, right? Like, leave hateful comments on my posts, troll my posts if you want, but actually trying to get someone's account taken down is just really horrible. So
Got it.
whoever did this, go get a life if
I
you're
love it.
listening.
All right. So I stole this kind of perspective from Eric Voorhees and my partners.
Mm.
I don't know if Mark agrees. I know Pomp disagrees with this, but I look at like crypto in four buckets. There's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, there are altcoins, and then there are just shit coins, like absolute shit coins. And if you'll entertain me and think about those for a second, what is special about Bitcoin to you?
Okay, that's a
Like,
good point. I
yeah,
think
what is special about it?
I think that the fact that it is one of the only like really, really, truly decentralized currencies where, you know, the SEC and the government can't go after them. There is no public figure to go after. I love that. I think that that's actually incredibly valuable. And, you know, I just think in general, like as we're looking at adoption of cryptocurrencies as a whole, you know, even if there's faster, better, cheaper blockchains, Bitcoin is the one that has the brand awareness. It's the one that mass consumers are at least more aware of. And so, even Ethereum, more people are becoming aware of it, but I would guess way, way, way fewer people know the word Ethereum than Bitcoin. And so I think that there's a lot of reasons why it will continue to be the king. I mean, the fact that it's the pair for changing in and out of other currencies innately gives it value. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that Bitcoin is going to continue to be a really, really dominant player in the space. But like we kind of talked about earlier, there's a lot of people that are building cool things and they're building it on other blockchains because the blockchains work better for them.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, do you, and that may, and that's really interesting. Do you think that Bitcoin, like the use case of it being like a asset or money, is the use case for it? Like, it doesn't have to have exponentially faster transaction speeds or all these other
mm,
things that people have forked or developed other blockchains for. I mean, maybe Bitcoin's use is what it's being used for right now, to hold it.
yeah, actually, I think that's a really good point, right? Because there's the store of wealth versus the everyday currency kind of, debate, right, within the crypto space. But yeah, I mean, we look at, like Lightning Labs and we look at side chains and people that have really tried to make Bitcoin more efficient, and that hasn't necessarily been going as well as planned, right? And so, like, it's not, the development hasn't been as fast as maybe we would all want for something like this for mass adoption. And so, I think that using it as a store of value is kind of how I've personally been using it.
Mhm.
I'm
I mean, do
a
you
I'm a
buy things
hodler.
with Bitcoin?
I have before, but to be honest, I really like to look at the opportunity cost when I'm
Mm.
buying something with Bitcoin. Like I remember on Pizza Day, Andreas tweeted something about how he bought a really gross bag of coffee for 5 Bitcoin, once. And so he's
Yeah.
like, you guys laugh at the Pizza Day guy, but you'll all have your Pizza Day moment
I
sometime.
know. Look, I recently bought a second home, and I didn't
Wow.
use Bitcoin to
Love that.
do it. I have a bunch of, I don't keep fiat cash. I use GUSD, and I
Yeah.
hold it just to gain interest on it. And I used the equivalent of 136 Bitcoin to buy this second home. 136 Bitcoin mark today. And
Mm.
so that's my pizza story that I'm sharing with you. That someday I paid an enormous amount of money, which you're thinking right now is probably an enormous amount of money. 136 Bitcoins, a lot of money right now, but potentially, very potentially just 6 months from now, I could be the biggest idiot with my own pizza story. So
Right.
hopefully that happens. Actually, I really do. I hope that for a lot of people who have gone through um, a lot of hardship, millennials in particular have really been dealt a difficult hand with the way their lives have just set up. They've seen their parents go through all kinds of struggles, and they've had to face their own economic situations. And I hope for them that some have parked some money in investment vehicles that pay off big for them. I hope that happens for you as well. And look, I really, really appreciated you sharing some personal stories today. And I really would challenge you to keep talking about the way you're approaching economics. I don't hear enough young people talking about it. I don't hear enough women talking about it. I don't hear enough men talking about it. And I just like to have this conversation. It's around financial literacy, sharing books that you've read, sharing, posts that are impactful to you, sharing strategies that you're using. I just don't think enough people. I don't know why and people don't share that information freely. It sounds like you kind of do with your friend group, maybe.
Mm.
Like
You know,
you're the accountant or the financially literate person of the friend group.
it's true.
Yeah, that's
But
cool.
no, I think that's a great point. And to be honest, I'm like, it's funny because I've thought about that. I'm like, gosh, I think it'd be so fun to be like to have like a personal finance podcast or something. Because I get so fired up and so excited talking
Yeah,
about it.
like
And
that's kind of what I'm doing with this
mm,
show. Like almost every morning, I just talk about kind of the financial decisions that I'm making in my own life and sharing them. And I'm not where I want to be, but I may be where
Mhm.
someone else is trying to get to. And that's kind of my point with you. You
Right.
are an inspiration to someone, no doubt. You are where someone wants to be, is dying to be. And if you don't share this stuff authentically, they don't know. And I mean, there's a whole legion of kids that need to hear that just because my parents struggled doesn't mean I have to struggle.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, I'm really glad that you're doing this and having these conversations. To be honest, I've done so many interviews with people in the blockchain space, and this is the first time someone like I've ended up talking about like my family finances growing up. And so like I really appreciate that you're like having these conversations and like pulling that out of people.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's because I'm highly trained in medicine. We have these we have secret ways that we extract this information. Now, look, um, uh, I really wish you the best. And if you come across like super cool stuff, technologies, businesses, people that you are compelled to like, man, I would invest in this. Think of me
Okay.
and keep the communication open because I'm trying to build out my network of smart people in this space and I'm always learning, and I know you are too.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's
Yeah.
been
And
really fun to chat with
before
you.
we cut off, like, where can people find you?
Yeah, so pretty much just type in Girl Gone Crypto anywhere online and you'll find me. So I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, of course, my YouTube channel, LinkedIn, all the places. Just if you type in Girl Gone Crypto, I should show up.
Awesome. Listen, have a great week, and thanks for stopping by.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Yep. Bye bye.